My brother has always despised me. He once told me, to my face, that he wished I were dead. So I granted his wish. I got stomach cancer. He regretted it, but it was too late. I died smiling, right in front of him. The call from Michael came as soon as I stepped through the door. The diagnosis report in my bag was already crumpled beyond recognition. He never used to call me first. "It was Dad's birthday 2 days ago," he said, his voice icy and distant. "Typical. Why didn't you come?" "I didn't feel like it," I replied flatly. "You went. That's enough." Even Mary flew back from abroad. Mary, my cousin on my uncle's side, had lived with us for years. She was there. "That's enough. You've always treated her like your real sister anyway." He went quiet for a beat, as if my words had struck a nerve. Then he snapped, "Sandra." I hung up. Sunlight disappeared from the room as the last rays of day faded. I sat down and tore the diagnosis paper into shreds. Just as the pieces scattered across the table, my phone lit up. A new message from Michael: "Mom's death anniversary is coming up. Michael is my brother. And he has always hated me. Because I'm the reason his mother died. Over 20 years ago, my mother died giving birth to me. I entered the world as she left it. One life for another. Nobody welcomed me. Because of me, my father lost the woman he loved. And Michael lost his mom. The resentment was born the day I was. And it never left. I didn't miss Dad's birthday on purpose. That day, I collapsed from pain and nearly blacked out. That's when I knew something was wrong. But honestly, my absence probably made their gathering easier. Michael never followed up. The day I stood outside his office building, I took a deep breath. After college, I had joined his company and climbed the ranks. No one knew we were related by blood. He met with me even less than with other employees. A senior executive had resigned last week. Everyone assumed I'd be promoted. I believed it too, until the diagnosis. In the hallway, a colleague waved and leaned in with a grin. "Sandra, when you get the promotion, we're expecting a feast." I smiled faintly. "Nothing's confirmed yet." "Oh come on, it's definitely yours. You're the most capable here." As we entered the conference room, Michael was already inside. Our eyes met for a brief second, then he looked away like I didn't exist. "Good morning, President Barron," I greeted. He didn't even glance at me. Just nodded. As if that argument had never happened. Colleagues streamed in. Michael cleared his throat. My coworker gave me a playful wink. I avoided her gaze. Then I heard a familiar name, Mary. She walked in, slender, graceful, composed. Michael stood beside her, smiling faintly. "Mary has just returned from overseas. She'll be joining us as the new deputy manager." Several people instinctively looked at me. I kept my eyes on Mary's serene smile. The room fell into a strange silence. I broke it by clapping. Others followed. Mary's gaze met mine, her smile gentle and sweet. Later, in the break room, the coffee was bitter enough to make my stomach churn. I stirred it absently. A colleague sat across from me, clearly upset. "I can't believe they handed her the role like that. Isn't this blatant favoritism? That position was supposed to be yours. You nearly landed in the hospital working overtime last quarter." She looked at the shadows under my eyes. "Seriously, Sandra. Don't overwork yourself. Maybe ease up on the coffee too." I held the warm cup, lips curling faintly. President Barron must have his reasons. She leaned into protest again. But my phone rang. Michael's voice thundered through the small room. "Sandra. My office. Now." My hand trembled. A few drops of coffee splashed onto my white shirt, stinging through the fabric. I answered quietly. "Coming." I opened his office door to find Mary seated on the couch, head lowered. She clutched a piece of paper tightly in her hands. Michael sat beside her, face cold and tense. People always said Michael and I had the same eyes. Sharp, slightly upturned, cold when not smiling. But we rarely smiled. And he never smiled at me. "I know Mary had help getting in," he said stiffly. "But she's qualified." He called my name, brow furrowed. "If you've got a problem, say it. But gossiping? Ganging up to isolate her?" His tone turned harsh. "Sandra, is toxicity just in your DNA?" It hadn't even been a full day. I looked at Mary. She raised her head at just the right moment, eyes red, tears shimmering. Then lowered it again. The performance had begun. But I wasn't in the mood to play my part. "If people talk, that's not my concern," I said calmly. "Besides, they're not fools." Suddenly, something crashed. His expensive fountain pen shattered on the floor, black ink spreading like spilled blood. "Sandra. You." I placed a crisp sheet of paper on his desk. It silenced him. His rage returned when he read it. "Sandra. Are you being childish? Spiteful?" He crumpled the resignation letter and tossed it to the floor like trash. But this wasn't spite. I've known for a long time. I don't get to throw tantrums. Only people with someone to comfort them do. I don't. I'll go to HR myself. I shut the door behind me, blocking out his voice. I hadn't walked far before Mary caught up to me. "Sandra," she said, still sniffling, gently grabbing my hand. "I'll tell Michael I don't want the role. Please don't act rashly. I shouldn't have come back. Don't let me ruin things between you two." The hallway was empty. I turned to face her. Mary's eyes were always soft, wide, and innocent. Especially now, red and watery. The image of sympathy. Just like the first time she came to live with us a decade ago. "Mary." I stepped closer, pinched her chin. "This trick really never gets old, does it?" Her face went pale. Ding, the elevator arrived. I let go and walked away. She stood frozen. I smiled slightly. "You knew, didn't you? There's never been any siblings between him and me. If anything, you're more like his real sister." As the elevator doors slid shut, my reflection stared back, cold and still. My gut twisted in pain. It wasn't always like this. When we were kids, though Michael didn't like me, he never crossed a line. Compared to Dad, who acted like I didn't exist, Michael was the only one who felt remotely human. I used to believe that even if he didn't love me, we were still family. That blood ties meant something. Until Mary moved in during middle school. That's when I realized. He could be kind. He could smile. He could be the kind of brother I'd only seen in stories. Just not to me. Mary wasn't satisfied. 5 days after she transferred to my school, I came home to a slap across the face. Michael hit me. Hard. I held my cheek, stunned, as he muttered words I couldn't understand: instigator. Poison. Apologize. Bad seed. And behind him stood Mary. Head bowed, hiding behind his arm. In that moment, the fragments clicked into a clear picture. A perfect lie. I tried to defend myself. But he didn't believe me. That burst of anger, that blatant favoritism. It shattered what was left of my childish hope. Michael wasn't clueless. He wasn't tricked. He chose to hate me. From that day on, our relationship nosedived. And I, still immature, thought. If he wouldn't ignore me like Dad, then fine. I'd fight him. At least then, he'd see me. That Cold War dragged on until I turned 18. Then I was dragged into hell. After that, there were no more arguments. No shouting. No anger. Just silence. We became strangers. By the time I returned from HR, the sky was dark. No streetlights were on. Only warm windows flickered across the street. My stomach had been aching since noon. I collapsed on the couch, hunger and pain gnawing at me. I forced myself to the fridge. The stench hit me like a wall. I'd forgotten, it hadn't been cleaned in a month. I washed some wilted vegetables, set them on the cutting board. The knife slipped. A drop of bright blood splashed onto the green leaves. Like a flower blooming in red. I stared at the cut. It hurt. I hadn't held back. The new wound layered over old scars. The knife clattered to the floor. I dropped to my knees, gasping. I was losing control again. Hurting myself, and unable to stop. The doctor had warned me, when the symptoms hit, take your meds. I didn't. Spend more time with family. Let yourself feel loved. It helps with the illness. But I have no family. The food I cooked went untouched. I threw it all away. Pain and hunger tore at me until I passed out. The next morning, someone knocked. Groggy, I stumbled to the door. Cracked it open. And all sleep vanished. Michael. Expressionless. Cold. I slammed the door. The clang of metal echoed through the apartment. I ran to throw on a coat, changed into pants. When I opened the door again, he was still there. His eyes fixed on me. Glacial and sharp. "What do you want?" I asked. No pleasantries. No smile. His eyes flicked downward. Landing on the ink just beneath my wrist, where my hand gripped the doorknob. His tone sharpened immediately. "You got a tattoo too?" I didn't answer. He took the silence as an admission. His cold expression darkened. "So that's it? You're hanging around that delinquent now? Turning yourself into the same kind of trash?" Michael had always known how to cut deep. When we were at our worst, our arguments were bloodless battles. Words as weapons, sharp and unforgiving. But he had no right to speak about Amber like that. Because she was the only friend I had. The only one who ever stayed. A faint trace of tobacco clung to his clothes. The scent made my stomach churn. Pain surged up from my gut to my skull, pounding behind my eyes. I clenched the doorknob, body trembling. I couldn't stop myself. I raised my hand to strike him. But the slap never landed. He caught my wrist midair. His fingers brushed over the scar on my forearm. And stopped. His expression faltered. "This scar?" He didn't finish. Because that's when I slapped him. Full force. His head jerked to the side, a vivid red mark blooming across his pale cheek. The scent of tobacco stuck to me, crawling into my bones, my nerves. A chill rose from the soles of my feet and swallowed me whole. I yanked my arm back. Red marks were already blooming around my wrist where he'd held me. I clenched my fists, willing the trembling to stop. Sandra. Leave. I kept my gaze on the floor. Don't touch me. Just go. He left. I stumbled into the bathroom and scrubbed the spot he touched. Scrubbed until the scar tissue split open again. Blood mingled with the icy tap water, swirling down the drain. Its bright color burned itself into my brain. Hands braced on the sink, I gasped for breath. It was only then that my body began to calm. By noon, a delivery man arrived with a massive bag of food. I laid everything out on the coffee table. The aroma flooded the room. After 2 days without food, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my chopsticks and ate. Greedily, desperately. Too desperately. Minutes later, I was in the bathroom, throwing it all back up. The cold floor soaked the hem of my dress. The pain was raw. Real. Alive. So vivid, it felt like dying. Curled on the tiles, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old messages. My fingers stopped on a thread from a month ago. Amber's last text, "What did you eat today?" I never answered. Not after I got the diagnosis. Not even once. 5 years of friendship? Long enough to leave a permanent mark. But short enough to scroll through in a few flicks. A red prompt popped up. Are you sure you want to delete this chat with your sister? The words blurred. But the pain in my gut kept me moving. I pressed delete. In that moment, 5 years of memories disappeared. And with them, the last thread keeping me tethered to this world. The day I got the diagnosis, the doctor looked me in the eye and said solemnly, "It's late-stage stomach cancer. With aggressive treatment and a strong will, you might still have 2 or 3 years." I smiled. Thanked him. And didn't say a word. Because there was no reason to keep fighting. Even my own brother had once said he wished I were dead. I lost track of how long I stayed home. Days blurred. I slipped in and out of sleep. Between starving and overeating, vomiting and blacking out. Only when I happened to open my phone did I realize what day it was. I forced myself to shower, dress, and head to the mall. I figured I should at least buy something nice, just once. One glance in the mirror and I froze. My face was hollowed out. Pale as paper. After a moment's hesitation, I put on makeup. It was a weekday, so the mall was quiet. I drifted between shops, not really looking. Until I saw it. A white dress in a shop window. Simple. Elegant. Beautiful. I walked in. The shop assistant smiled warmly. Just as I opened my mouth to speak, a too familiar voice rang out, "Brother Michael, this white dress is so pretty." Cruel, isn't it? How life loves its little ironies. I turned. Mary stood in the entrance. Wide-eyed, glowing, delighted. Like nothing had ever happened. Like we were still girls sharing a home. Michael was behind her. Expression cold as ever. The perfect picture. The doting brother. The returning sister. I smiled mockingly. Ignored them. That one. Size M, wrap it up? Me too, Mary chimed in. Same size. We pointed at the same dress. The shop assistant looked flustered. This design is very popular, she said. Only the display model is left in M. I can check other sizes or show you similar styles if you'd like. Mary frowned, ready to speak. I'll take it, I said, cutting her off. The clerk nodded and left to prepare the dress. Sandra, Mary called. I turned. What? Could you give me that dress? She asked, eyes pleading. You know I love white dresses. And you don't really wear them. Shameless. Absolutely shameless. I glanced at Michael. He looked away. Letting her go on. It was laughable. All these years, and she still hadn't changed. Everything she liked, she assumed I should hand it over. Toys. Clothes. Grades. Even, family. No, I said coldly. She stared at me in shock as I took the dress from the assistant's hands. Her eyes filled with tears. She bowed her head and returned to Michael's side. He leaned in to whisper something. She smiled again, eyes gleaming, and clung to his arm. Before leaving, she shot me a quick glance. As if to say, he's mine now. But the dress didn't matter. What she wanted, what she always wanted, was for me to see it. To see that Michael might love her more. So what? It had always been this way. As time went on, my body just kept deteriorating. Michael never contacted me again. I marked the days on my calendar. Waiting for the end. Until one day, Mary messaged me. She invited me to a banquet. Then added, Sandra, Brother Michael's worried about you. This could be a chance to reconcile. She was always good at playing innocent. Always. I checked the date. Then got dressed. And went. The ballroom glittered with warm golden lights. Laughter. Champagne. Perfectly dressed strangers swirling around me. I had been alone too long. Suddenly thrust into noise and glitter, I felt dizzy. Across the room, I saw Michael standing beside Mary. Laughing. Talking. Then he turned. Saw me. His face shifted. He angled toward me. But didn't move. As if waiting for me to come to him. To apologize. To chase. I didn't. Mary noticed me too. She beamed and came over. I turned my back. And walked straight out to the balcony. The wind outside was cold. I sat by the railing, listening to laughter echo behind me. Just waiting for the night to end. Then, a hand suddenly grabbed me from behind. I stumbled backward. Into the arms of a stranger. The reek of cigarettes suffocated me. I gagged. Gritting my teeth, I shoved him away. That's when I saw her. Mary. Standing there. Beautiful. Smiling. Winking. My phone buzzed. Mary, Sandra, Raymond Gray saw you and asked me to introduce you. He's super nice, go talk. I barely started typing a reply. When Raymond grabbed my wrist. His eyes dropped to my chest. Then flicked away. But that one glance was enough. I slapped his hand away and doubled over, dry heaving. He leaned closer. I stumbled back. The lights. The smoke. The towering man. It broke something in me. I trembled, pulled a spring-loaded knife from my purse. My hand shook. The blade slashed his arm. Blood sprayed. Sandra. A shout split the air. A hand smacked the knife from mine. It clattered to the ground. Michael. Thunder in his voice. But it felt like a noose tightening around my throat. My chest burned. My head pounded. I gasped. Eyes dry, vision blurring. No tears. Just pain. Mary ran in, her gown flowing, her eyes wide. Oh my God, what happened? She turned to Raymond. You said you liked Sandra, you just wanted to talk. He raised his hands. I didn't do anything. She just snapped. Mary turned sweetly to Michael. I trust Raymond. Of course she did. I swung my hand toward her. But Michael stepped in, shoving me aside. I hit the ground hard. They all stood above me. My body screamed in agony. Michael's voice pierced the air. What is wrong with you? Sandra. Are you insane? I wanted to scream. Cry. Collapse. Instead, I dragged myself up. Yes, I rasped. I'm sick. And I'm dying. Blood welled up in my throat. I coughed. Thick, warm, metallic. It stained my dress. Splattered the floor. Michael froze. He reached out, instinctively. But I stepped back. Why didn't you ask what he did to me? You always take her side. You never listen. You never cared. Because in your eyes, I'm the criminal. I killed Mom. Right? Silence. Then his voice, cold as ever, isn't it true? Yeah. No tears came. Not even now. So I'll repay her with my life. That was the last time I ever called him my brother. I smiled through the blood. I'm dying. Are you satisfied now? That night, Michael tried to follow. But she was gone. Sandra disappeared into the dark. He thought about it endlessly later. If only he'd moved sooner. If only he'd stopped her. But he hadn't. Sandra never returned. She blocked his number. His messages turned red with exclamation marks. He waited 2 days outside her apartment. Chain smoking. She never came. 20 years of blood ties. Torn like paper. He had no way to find her anymore. So he went to the hospital. The doctor, wearing glasses, expression neutral, let out a slow sigh. You need to find her as soon as possible. If this continues, she really may not last more than a few months. Michael lowered his head like a reprimanded child. How did she end up with this disease? Young people don't know how to take care of themselves, the doctor replied, sighing again. Michael's hands curled into fists, nails digging into his palms. On the 8th day of silence, Michael forced open her apartment door. The locksmith finished his job, packed up, and left. The moment he stepped inside, an unbearable stench struck him. He had never been in her home before. 20 years. He had spent all that time resenting Sandra. But not once had he ever sat down and spoken to her properly. Not once. The apartment was painfully sparse. It didn't look like a young woman lived here at all. Something was leaking from the fridge. He opened it. Everything inside had rotted away. The kitchen. The bathroom. The study. The bedroom. Every space was cold. Lifeless. As if no one had ever truly lived there. But everything was clean. Which meant she had. In her bedroom, a glass jar lay shattered on the floor. Fragments sparkled in the dim light, scattered alongside pills of every color. clearly thrown in a fit of rage. On the desk, an empty paper box caught his eye. When he read the label, his blood ran cold. Venlafaxine. Antidepressants. Michael turned and ran. Out of the apartment. Out of the building. But the darkness that had descended on him that day didn't lift. It pressed down harder, heavier. Everything he'd buried deep inside was clawing its way to the surface now. Twisting. Suffocating. A secret. Dark. Desperate. He collapsed to his knees under the burning sun. And in that moment, a terrifying realization struck him: if he didn't find Sandra soon, he might never see her alive again. Day 12. Since Sandra vanished. Michael called Amber. She was abroad, time difference made it past midnight. A woman answered, voice groggy and irritable. Who is this? It's Michael. His voice was quiet. Stiff. He'd never liked Amber. That wild, reckless girl who became Sandra's closest friend when they were 18. And she'd never liked him either. Now she swore at him. A string of curses sharp enough to make his ears ring. What the hell do you want? Do you know where Sandra is? His voice trembled. What happened? Her tone shifted in an instant. He couldn't say it. The words burned his throat like acid. She has stomach cancer. The line cut out. Silence. A hollow, endless beep. Michael stared at the phone. Frozen. A minute later, he called again. This time, Amber picked up. She was crying. Sobs pouring through the speaker, raw and uncontrolled. His heart twisted. He spoke, voice cracking. Please. Help me find her. If she agrees to treatment, there's still a chance. A year or two, maybe. Please. Amber's voice shook with grief. Live a few more years? For what, Michael? You don't get it. Michael swallowed hard. I do. What do you know? He hesitated. I know she. Amber let out a bitter, broken laugh. Michael. You're the person I hate most in this world. Mary is your sister. So Sandra isn't? Do you even know? She already died once? Michael froze. You didn't know, did you? She died when she was 18. The words crashed into him like waves, unrelenting. And then, it started to make sense. The signs had always been there. How Sandra had changed so drastically at 18. The coldness in her eyes. Her distance from every man. The long sleeves, even in summer. The scars on her wrists. The knife in her bag. The scattered antidepressants. His sister. The only one he had left. She had started to decay from the inside out? The moment she turned 18. That year, I made a call to Michael. I don't even remember why. Maybe I hadn't completely given up. Maybe some tiny, desperate part of me still hoped. That he'd care. That he'd save me. I just wanted to know. If he still saw me as family. If he remembered that I existed. If I meant anything at all. I called him brother. My voice was soft. Calm. No accusations. No blame. Only a question. If I really died one day. Please. What would you do? Save me. Please. The fruit knife beside me gleamed in the dim light. My fingers trembled. Breath caught in my throat. He didn't call me crazy. He didn't ask what I meant. He didn't even pause. He answered with that same cold voice. Clear. Sharp. Merciless. That would be great, he said. You took Mom's life. This way, you finally paid for it. And just like that, the sea swallowed me whole. I drowned in silence. When the blade sliced through my skin, there was barely any pain. Only the warmth of blood. A dark red trail sliding down my arm. That smell. That moment. It pulled me back. Back to that alley. Narrow. Dark. Not even light could squeeze in. Hands yanked my hair back violently. I screamed. I cried. I begged. I'm sorry. Please. Let me go, please. But he didn't. He wasn't human. He was a monster. He slapped me, over and over, until my mouth filled with blood. Until I couldn't speak. He ripped my clothes. The stench of cigarette smoke and burning skin filled the air. He burned me. Stubbed out the cigarette on my body. From my waist. To my shoulders. Up my neck. One. After. Another. I don't remember how long it lasted. From screaming, to silence. From pleading, to nothing. I lay there, broken. Covered in filth. Covered in blood. Wishing I had never been born. I was just walking home. Wearing a dress I liked. That's all. Was that a crime? I don't know when he left. The mud had half swallowed me. I was naked. Alone. In the dark. And then, Amber appeared. I didn't know her. But she knew me. She called me by name. She took off her jacket, wrapped it around me. Her hands shook as she cleaned the dirt from my face. She carried me. To the police. Then home. It was already deep into the night. My father was in the living room. Unusually. He looked up. Took one glance. At my torn dress. At my bloodied skin. Then looked away. Just like always. Later, he left. Again. And the house was empty. After that, every time I closed my eyes, I was back there. The smell of my own scorched skin. The pain. The blood. It would have been better to die. But I didn't. Amber called me one day. From an unknown number. Her voice was soft, trying to sound casual. But I could hear it. The fear in her breath. So I asked directly, "Why did you call?" She hesitated. Then gathered her courage. "Don't die. Sandra. I was scared you'd kill yourself. That's why I memorized your number?" I never thought she'd say it so plainly. The words burned through me. I looked at the knife on the table. The blood pooling around it. And I whispered, "Okay. Call me an ambulance." I lived. But I never truly escaped. The shadows clung to me. Everywhere. Smoke. Darkness. Even myself. The monster still hid in every shadow. Waiting for me to let my guard down. To drag me back into the dark. I remember everything. Every burn. Every breath. Every second of that night. I am awake. Awake in pain. Awake in death. Awake in survival. Amber took me to see a psychiatrist. The doctor recommended hospitalization. I didn't go. She gave me medication. I didn't take any. Instead, I opened every bottle, poured all the pills into a glass jar. Lined them up on my shelf. Amber stayed with me that whole summer. It was bright outside. But I never left the house. She kept me company. Played games. Chatted endlessly about dramas and cartoons. But at night, I knew. She cried in secret. Every morning, her eyes were swollen. One evening, she stepped out of the shower and saw me standing on the balcony. She panicked. Nearly collapsed. I looked back at her and stepped down. "Amber," I said. "Will you be my sister?" Because I had no mother. A brother who hated me. A father who treated me like air. A body in ruins. A heart already gone. I had nothing. She ran forward and hugged me tight. Her tears soaked through my clothes. "Yes," she whispered. "My sweet Sandra. I'll be your sister now. Promise me you'll keep living." I held her. Smiled faintly. "Sis," I said, "don't let me trap you. Okay? Because I was never meant to survive. Everything about me was broken. I looked normal on the outside. But inside, all I'd ever wanted was to die. After Amber left, I started to look normal again. But every day felt like I was walking through fire. Just staying alive drained everything I had. I didn't even have the strength to argue with Michael anymore. Binge eating. Starvation. Sleepless nights. I never took care of myself. So when I was told I had stomach cancer, I felt relieved. Because finally, I had permission to die. I had already picked the day I'd go. Mom's death anniversary. Also my birthday. But in over 2 decades, I'd only ever celebrated it twice. Both times, with Amber. Michael never remembered. But yes, I had envied those girls. The ones who sat in their mother's lap, hair braided by gentle hands, held close, kissed on the forehead. I envied them so deeply it twisted something inside me. No one in this world hated me more than I hated myself. The day came. Just like any other. The stomach pain gnawed at me from the moment I woke. I managed to eat 2 buns for breakfast. Then vomited them up. I lay curled on the couch, scrolling through my phone. One by one, I deleted every photo. When the final image disappeared, I stood up and walked to the balcony. And that's when the front door slammed open. The noise echoed harshly through the old building. A shadow stumbled into view. Michael. It had been over 10 days since we last saw each other. He looked like he'd aged a decade. Amber must have told him. She was the only one I'd ever mentioned this place to. His clothes were wrinkled. His chest heaved with each breath. That always straight spine of his was bent now, hunched under the weight of something unbearable. And his eyes. They were broken. For the first time in my life, I saw tears in Michael's eyes. And heard him beg. I was wrong. "Sandra. I'm your brother. I was wrong. I'm sorry." But it was 10 years too late. I stood barefoot on the edge of the balcony railing. Looking down at him. Unmoved. He sobbed. This proud, tall man, over 6 feet, was crumbling. I wore that white dress. Simple. Clean. The one I'd bought from the mall. It exposed every scar on my body. They weren't tattoos. They were wounds. Memories. Proof that I had survived when I didn't want to. Scars from every time I chose pain over numbness. The tiles beneath my feet were cold. The wind roared past my ears. "Don't jump. Sandra. I'm begging you, please don't jump." I looked at him. And I smiled. Jumping would hurt. but only once more. I'd already suffered enough in this life. Maybe the next one would be gentler. Michael, I said softly. Then I stepped off the edge. I saw the terror flood his face. Saw him leap toward me. But I was already gone. I'm going to see Mom now, I whispered. Extra, sleepless night. Michael opened his eyes. In front of him stood 5-year-old Sandra. She was peeking up at him, her lashes wet with tears, a drop of blood on her finger. She looked shy. Was this where it all started? Before she was born, everyone had been so excited to meet her. Even Michael had looked forward to having a little sister. He remembered how Mom would lie on the bed, stroking his hair gently. You'll protect your little sister, right? And he would nod seriously. Sis is a princess. I'm her knight. I'll protect her forever. But then she was born. And everything fell apart. Mom died. Her warmth turned into a small urn. Then a cold gravestone. No more hugs. No more bedtime stories. No more juju. She never whispered, Mom loves you, again. It poured on the day of her funeral. Michael came home drenched in rain. Upstairs, the newborn cried. Loud. Shrill. The sound mixed with the rain in his ears. And something in him broke. He had no mom. And his sister had taken her. That's when Michael began to hate Sandra. Even though he knew, deep down, that it wasn't fair. That she was just a baby. Still, he couldn't help it. So he distanced himself. Didn't play with her. Didn't talk to her. Only scolded her, cold, harsh, detached. But every time she looked up at him, eyes wide with sadness, guilt flooded him. He hated her. But he also loved her. She was his sister. His blood. Innocent and guilty, all at once. So what did he do? He yelled. Told her to get lost. Watched her flinch and turn away. And that pain took root. It lasted a lifetime. By the time she grew up, it was too late. Sandra never told him anything. She swallowed all her suffering. Strangers knew more than he ever did. In his dream, Sandra blinked at him again, hesitant. As he looked over, she flinched. Tears on the verge of falling. Come here, he said softly. She hesitated. So he sighed, retrieved the first aid kit, and knelt down. He gently wrapped a bandage around her tiny finger. Does it hurt? Sandra stared at the band-aid. The tear finally slipped down her cheek. Then she suddenly threw her arms around him. Thank you, brother. Michael froze. He'd never hugged Sandra before. Not once, in 20 years. Her small frame was so soft. So warm. Why hadn't he done this earlier? His arms trembled as he hugged her tightly. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He said it over and over. Couldn't stop. Sandra tried to wipe away his tears. Don't cry, brother. She was crying too. I was wrong too, brother. Don't cry. I won't bother you anymore. Sandra's blood scared you, right? I'll bandage myself next time. Brother, please don't cry. You weren't wrong. It was me. Sandra, I failed you. All these years. Don't be mad at me, please. The little girl sniffled, wiping her nose. Okay, as long as you stop crying, I won't be mad. I've stopped, he said gently. So please, don't be angry anymore. This time, I'll protect you. We'll grow up safe and sound. Michael had always known. Their father didn't like Sandra. So he tried. Tried to fill the hole. Tried to make up for the lost years. Sandra was like a cotton doll. No matter how cold he had been, she never stopped calling him brother. Her smile always bright. Always full of light. He used to think it was because she didn't remember the past. Until one day. Sandra accidentally knocked over a cup on the coffee table. It didn't break. Just spilled. But her whole body tensed. Her eyes widened, voice shaking. I'm sorry, brother. I didn't mean to. Please don't hate me. And he remembered. He'd once yelled at her for things like that. She remembered everything. You didn't do anything wrong. Don't apologize. He said gently, patting her head. But Sandra looked down. Tears dripped onto the floor. What's wrong? Will you go back, to the way you were before? She clutched the hem of her dress. He leaned in, confused. I heard you can make a wish on your birthday. And a fairy will grant it? I don't know when mine is, but I made one anyway. I wished brother would be nicer to me. She looked up at him, stars in her eyes. Did the fairy talk to you? He pulled her into a warm hug. Cool tears hit her neck. She did, he whispered. And she said, whatever Sandra wishes for, brother will make it come true. She smiled. Then I wish brother could be happy. Don't cry anymore, okay? The night before the wedding, Michael visited their mother again. Mom, Sandra's getting married tomorrow. I probably won't have time to come visit. Your little princess has found her prince now. From now on, there'll be 2 people looking out for her. If this really is just a dream, Mom, can I stay asleep a little longer? But the dream didn't last. The bride disappeared. Panic erupted. Guests whispered behind their hands. The ceremony crumbled. Amber, in her bridesmaid dress, tore through the hotel like a storm, screaming Sandra's name over and over. No answer. Sandra's phone was off. The last message she'd sent was a simple heart emoji. Love you. Now every text Amber sent bounced back, marked by that haunting red exclamation point. Just like that time. Just like before. Michael lost his mind. He rushed up to the 18th floor, banging on every door, one after another. People yelled at him, cursed, slammed doors in his face. He didn't care. He kept knocking. Until he found one room unlocked. And there she was. Sandra stood at the balcony in her wedding dress. She was breathtaking. Layers of delicate lace and flowing white tulle floated around her. Her makeup was perfect. Her bare arms were porcelain smooth. She looked like the picture of joy. She didn't say a word. Just turned to look at him. Sandra? He stepped closer. She held his gaze. And smiled. Today was her birthday. And also, the day she'd chosen to die. The same as always. The next second? She leaned back. And fell. No! Michael's scream tore through the sky. Everything blurred. A spinning reel of memories flashing all at once. Blood on white satin. Blood on her wedding gown. So many versions of Sandra flickered through his mind. Laughing, crying, smiling, silent. All of them frozen in that single, irreversible moment. The moment she jumped from the 18th floor. The moment she whispered, Michael, I'm going to see Mom now. No. Michael shot up from his dream. The night outside was black and heavy, thick like ink. On the nightstand sat a photo of teenage Sandra in her school uniform. He reached out with trembling fingers and turned on the lamp. The picture lit up, suddenly sharp and clear. In it, she wasn't smiling. But in his dreams, she always looked at him with those gently curved eyes, that soft, familiar pout. Calling out sweetly, brother. In those dreams, she wasn't scarred. She wasn't sick. She wasn't broken. But dreams end. And real life offers no rewinds. Michael had always known that. So why? Why couldn't he have loved her just a little sooner? Been a little kinder? His sister would never, ever come back again. Outside the window, the wind howled, shaking the glass in its frame. He sat hunched at the edge of his bed, face buried in his hands, sobbing so hard his body shook. He tried countless times to piece together everything she had been through, to reconstruct the weight of her pain. But every attempt only led to his own unraveling. He spiraled, eaten alive by guilt. Day after day. Year after year. And at 36 years old, Michael finally went to find Sandra. Extra, Amber's POV. Amber first met Sandra in their first year of high school. Sandra was in the class next door. Her photo was always posted on the school's honor board, high ponytail, calm expression. Teachers on the same floor often brought up her name when she was called into the office for some minor offense, their tone full of admiration. Amber had never liked model students. Especially the kind who looked like they came from happy, perfect families. So different from her. Their lives had no reason to overlap. Even sharing the same floor, they barely knew each other by face. Until that day. Amber was walking through the hallway when she heard whispers. She turned to look, but no one was there. A strange annoyance bubbled up in her chest, with nowhere to go. She kept walking. Then someone grabbed her from behind. It was the girl from the photos. Sandra. She stood behind her, taking off her jacket and handing it over, gesturing for Amber to tie it around her waist. Only then did Amber realize. A large red stain had bloomed across the back of her pants. It was early autumn. The air still held a chill. Sandra's arms were covered in goosebumps, and yet she ran to the campus store to buy her supplies. Amber thanked her. Sandra just curved her eyes slightly and said softly, "You're welcome." It was the first time Amber noticed. When Sandra smiled, she was truly beautiful. Like a magnolia in bloom. Delicate and quietly stunning. But back then, Amber never could have imagined that their second encounter would come in such a way. Amber had narrowly missed the cutoff for her preferred university. Her home was full of endless arguments. To avoid the chaos, she wandered the streets at night. That night, she passed by a narrow alley and noticed a small charm on the ground. She recognized it instantly. It used to dangle from Sandra's backpack, always swinging gently behind her. Amber turned the corner into the alley. Her mind blank. The weak glow of her phone's flashlight illuminated a motionless figure on the ground. A familiar face, smeared with dirt, blank eyes staring in her direction. Her clothes were torn. Her snow-white back was streaked with red. like vivid flowers blooming across it. A faint, bitter scent of burned flesh lingered in the air. The mud around her was soaked. It felt like amber had been slapped across the face. Everything before her eyes became a blade, driving straight through her chest, tearing her heart to pieces. Her magnolia had fallen into the dirt, barely alive. Amber couldn't bear to think. She couldn't remember how her hands trembled as she took off her coat and wrapped Sandra in it. Couldn't remember how she managed to lift her up and rush her to the police. She didn't remember what Sandra had told the officers, her face expressionless as she sat answering questions like a lifeless doll. Amber couldn't bear to imagine what Sandra had gone through before she got there. She brought her home. Sandra leaned silently against the window, wearing Amber's jacket. The shifting light from outside flickered across her face, but she remained still, like a mannequin. Amber looked at her, eyes burning with unshed tears. She didn't know what to say. Sandra didn't even know her. This wasn't the time to reminisce. She couldn't act like a friend Sandra could cry in front of. All she could do was take her home. But she was scared. All soulless things looked the same. Wooden puppets painted with bright colors. Hollow insects left behind in corners. Dead fish drifting with lifeless eyes in murky water. And that day, Sandra, trapped in the mud. Amber jolted awake again one afternoon. Her heart beat faster than ever. The fear of losing something grew louder and louder. Arguments still raged in her home. But when she closed her eyes, all she saw was Sandra's face that night. Silent. Grief-stricken. Like a cry for help. Or like someone who had already given up. She called her. The dial tone rang endlessly. Amber bit her nails, praying nonstop. Please answer. Just let me hear her voice. Just prove she's still alive. When the call finally connected, Amber nearly burst into tears. Sandra's voice was soft. She asked who it was, and what they wanted. Amber froze. She'd never been good with words, and now she had no idea what to say. She blurted out awkward, meaningless chatter, fumbling her way through the silence. She didn't even know what she was saying by the end. But Sandra didn't hang up. She just listened. And then finally, Sandra asked, "Why did you call me?" Amber was caught off guard. Why? Because she was scared. So scared. Every time she closed her eyes, all she could see was Sandra's hollow gaze, that look of utter despair. She was terrified that one day Sandra would simply vanish from this world. Her hand trembled as she clutched the phone. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Don't die. Sandra. Please, don't die. Amber had pulled Sandra back from the edge. And in the years to come, there were moments she hated herself for it. Why hadn't she let her leave, just a little easier? Amber moved into Sandra's house. There was no one else. Sometimes her brother came by, but they treated each other like strangers. Michael didn't like her. Amber could tell. But she didn't like Michael either. What kind of brother had no idea what his sister had been through? Sandra didn't talk much. She often locked herself in her room. Amber buried herself in research, trying to understand how to heal psychological trauma. Tiptoeing around Sandra's pain, hoping to gently cover that night with silence. At first, Sandra didn't respond. Later, she'd say a word or two. Amber thought things were getting better. Until that day. She saw Sandra standing on the balcony. The wind was fierce. It looked like it could blow her off at any second. Amber nearly broke down. But in the very next moment, Sandra stepped down. "Amber," she said softly. "Will you be my sister?" Yes. Amber would have said yes to anything she asked. That night, Amber held her for a long time and cried. But Sandra didn't cry. Amber had never seen Sandra cry. Not once. No matter how deep the pain. She never cried. Her sister had suffered so much. So much that even tears had abandoned her. Extra, Amber continued. Later, Amber accompanied Sandra to see a psychologist. The doctor prescribed a whole list of medications. Sandra agreed to go back to school. For a while, it really seemed like things were getting better. Sandra was slowly returning to normal. She dragged Amber back to repeat their senior year together. Monitored her study schedule every day. A year later, Amber looked at her transcript and nearly cried. But on the night she had to decide which college to attend, she and Sandra got into a fight. The overseas university was amazing. But it was too far from Sandra. And Amber was afraid. Sandra stood silently by the door, eyes lowered. Then, without a word, she started removing her clothes. One piece at a time. Amber stood frozen as she saw the network of hideous scars crisscrossing Sandra's body. Some were still bleeding. Big and small. They covered her. All of her. So this was the truth behind her getting better. Just an illusion. For the first time, Amber felt truly powerless. She realized. There are some people in this world who simply cannot be saved. Like a cracked puppet, Sandra walked toward her slowly. She gently wiped the tears from Amber's face, and then hugged her softly. "Sis. Don't let me trap you." Her voice was barely audible. "I'll end up resenting you." That same crushing helplessness hit Amber again. The magnolia she had worked so hard to rescue. In the end, still withered in the mud. Sandra had already wilted long ago. On the day Sandra sent Amber off at the airport, Amber didn't cry. Not until the plane took off. Not until she was on her way to a foreign country, far from home. Then she cried. Like a child. Because she knew. Sandra wouldn't survive. The signs had been there all along. But when Michael's phone call reached her, she still broke down completely. What's the point of living a few more years? Let her go. Living only brought more pain. Why keep her? The day Sandra jumped from the 18th floor, Amber was right outside the door. She knew Sandra wouldn't want to see her there. But the moment she heard Michael's guttural scream, she turned and saw a flash of white falling rapidly past the window. Amber stumbled and ran downstairs. White, blood, blended together. It burned her eyes. She gently held Sandra's hand, took off her jacket, and covered her wounds. In our next life, I'll be your real sister. Okay? Sandra couldn't respond anymore. But Amber knew. She would have said yes. At Sandra's funeral, Amber didn't cry. She wore beautiful makeup and sent Sandra off for the final time. Only a few people stood in the mourning hall. Sandra's father stood before her photo, blank-eyed. Motionless. Michael was off to the side, speaking with guests. Amber placed a bouquet of magnolias on the altar. When she turned to leave, she saw Mary. Wearing a black dress, eyes red from weeping, walking slowly up to Sandra's portrait. Pretending to grieve. Amber was never the type to keep her temper. Back then, for Sandra. Her fragile, flower-like little sister who cried easily. Amber had learned how to speak softly. To be gentle. But now that Sandra was gone, she had no reason to hold back. Wearing high heels, Amber stepped forward and kicked Mary hard behind the knee. Mary yelped in pain and collapsed to the floor. Right in front of Sandra's memorial. Everyone in the room turned to look. Amber locked eyes with Michael. There was fire in her gaze. Defiance. Michael only looked for a moment, then lowered his eyes. Amber had been a troublemaker. Smoking. Skipping class. Fighting. She'd done it all. Now she grabbed Mary by the hair, forced her to kneel in front of Sandra, and made her bow 3 times. Mary's forehead went red. Tears welled up in her eyes. Amber let go. Mary crumpled to the ground. Then Amber stomped on her hand, grinding her heel in. Mary's tears spilled over immediately. Amber squatted down, smiling coldly. I'm a thug. I'm nothing like Sandra. She had morals. I don't. Mary. Every bit of pain my sister endured. I'll return it to you, piece by piece. As long as I'm alive, you'll never know peace. On Sandra's birthday the following year, it rained heavily. Amber brought a beautiful bouquet, and some of Sandra's favorite snacks. But she arrived late. Someone else had gotten there before her. The rain poured down, unrelenting. The man on the steps had been standing there for a long time. Drenched head to toe. Staring blankly at the name on the headstone. Amber didn't want to approach. She hated Michael. Despised him. But the man didn't move. It was like his feet had rooted into the earth. He stood there for 4 or 5 hours straight. The flowers in Amber's hand were beginning to wilt. The cemetery keeper chatted with her, pointing at the black figure through the rain. That man comes often, he whispered. Every time, he just stands there for hours. No idea who's buried in there. She's no one to him, Amber replied coldly. She didn't even carry an umbrella. Just stormed into the rain with the flowers and food. Michael seemed to sense something. He turned his head as she got close. His face was worn, gaunt. It was impossible to tell whether it was rain or tears streaking down his face. But his eyes. They were red, like blood was about to pour from them. Amber placed the flowers down. Then, without hesitation, she slapped him. Hard. His face turned, blood at the corner of his mouth. But he said nothing. Amber pulled her hand back. I want to talk to Sandra. Michael lowered his eyes. Turned silently and walked away. Amber watched him go. Then turned back to the tombstone. Sandra. Haunt him in his dreams. Break him from the inside out. Oh, and one more thing. Good news. Mary's leg is broken. She'll never walk again. The rain didn't stop. Only the endless tap-tap-tap of it striking stone. A girl stood still before the grave. Expressionless. Colorless. Forget it. Amber sighed. Don't go looking for him anymore. She crouched down, staring into Sandra's photo. Just forget it all. And by the way, wait for me. Next life, your big sister will protect you. Amber never knew that on Sandra's 18th birthday, the first one she ever truly celebrated, she made a wish that in her next life, she could be Amber's little sister again.